about 2 years ago now. I remember the date quite specifically. It was April the 23rd, and about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a journey should have started for me, but didn't. To kind of give you some context, I was at my parents' house in Exeter, in a little town called Kentersby, just north of Exeter, and we just had lunch. And lunch in my parents' house has been the same ever since I can remember, from the beginning of time. And that is, when you have 4 boys that you need to feed, what my mum used to do is bring out 2 big loaves of bread, throw them in the middle of the table, bring out margarine, cheese, ham, pickles and various other things to put on those bread, and we basically just kept eating. And the idea is you keep eating until you physically can't eat anymore, and then that's the point that you stop. And that's very much my mother's philosophy on how to feed the boys. And it was, as I say, 2 years ago, April the 23rd, I just had one of these monumental lunches, and I was making my way upstairs for a little snooze, and I thought I'd swing by the bathroom. Don't worry. When I got there, I jumped on the scales because I thought that was a big lunch. I wonder what that did. This was the number that came back to me: 20 stone and 10 pounds. So this is what I was 2 years ago. 20 stone, 10 pounds. Now, at that moment, as I said, that should be the start of a journey for me. I should have seen that and gone, oh, okay, he's back there, Tiger. But you know what the first thing I thought was? Cool, my weight's the same as the year. I thought maybe next year I could be 20 stone 11. And I thought I'd have to stop at 20 stone 13 because there's no 20 stone 14, but that seems like an interesting objective for me. So, as I say, the reason why I didn't start that journey was because my life was actually really good. I had a great family, and here we are on holiday, and that's Noah picking his nose, and it's obviously me, and that's Rory, who was just born at the time, and my lovely wife Zoe. So, you know, and we're having a great time. Work was fantastic. I was riding around Santa Monica on a Segway and getting paid for it. I mean, what could be better in life than that? I was achieving some of the personal goals that I'd always wanted to achieve, which was taking my dad to the Formula One at Silverstone. So actually, lots of things were amazing. So at that moment in my life, why would I want to do anything different? Everything was great. And in August, actually, because so that was kind of all the way up to July, in August I moved house, and I set myself a challenge where in the last 10 days of living in my house, I decided to eat out of the my top 10 takeaway restaurants in Putney to kind of, as an honourable set. Life was good, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed food, but then we hit this date, 12th of September 2010. I have no idea what happened on this date, but it's an important date because at that moment in my life, something obviously did happen. I don't know whether I split a pair of trousers, whether I broke a chair when I sat down, whether all of a sudden I went into Abercrombie & Fitch and realised that even treble XL is not even close to fitting me. Or all those various other things. It could have been none of those things, it could have been all of those things. But it's very, very fair to say on that date, the camel's back was broken. There was a straw, and I don't know what it is. But from that moment on, my life took quite a dramatic change. And this is the weight graph that I track myself on. And this is genuine data that I was putting into my iPhone. Now, this is the 23rd of April, and this is when I was 20 stone 10. I started sticking the data. As you can see, I was quite happy. Lost a bit of weight. That was probably just from the lunch coming out. And then, but we get to a point, 23rd of September, here, all of a sudden, something happened. I started tracking my weight, I started measuring how things were doing, and I really started focusing in on things. What I want to try and share to you today is, this isn't a Rosemary Connolly light kind of diet exercise kind of regime thing. I want to talk about goals, I want to talk about achieving goals, and I want to talk about how some of the things that I've learned in this journey, and I don't want to appear to be over smug, I don't want to vomit smugness all over you. That's kind of not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to say I learned a few things over this journey. There's a very big point on Sunday, which is just coming up, which is a kind of another big part of this journey. So I just thought I'd take this opportunity to share with you some of the things that I've learned over the last 2 years and how we can maybe use that in some of our own personal goals, but also how can we use it for maybe some of our clients, some of the broader business, commercial, professional goals that we're trying to achieve in our life. First thing I did was I create an inspiring and exciting goal. It's so important. And it's often, you know, and I'm really, you know, and kind of as I was pulling this together over the last couple of days, this presentation, I realised that actually a lot of the things I don't do myself. We often sit down with clients and go, you know what the goal over the next 2 years should be? It should be to increase the number of people you engage on Facebook by 10%. That's not that exciting. I mean, it's important, but it's not that exciting. It's not something that's going to inspire them. It's not something that they're going to go, yes, today I'm trying to create an opportunity to reach 10% more people on Facebook. Now, one of the things that I did, and the kind of goal that I set myself Doesn't sound that exciting. Be normal weight. Now, normal is not that kind of politically correct. What's normal, man? It's normal as far as BMI. So at the time, my BMI number was 34.9. 35, by the way, is like super morbidly obese. Is kind of the top one. And so I thought to myself, why not set myself an obscene goal, a ridiculous goal? That means losing 8 stone from that point all the way down into that kind of normal BMI level. And that's what I set myself. Now, that goal being interesting, but then I started to think about all the benefits that go with that. And again, this is where I think we sometimes forget when we're setting goals for our clients, when we're setting goals for ourselves, think about the benefits of what happens when you achieve that goal. Because really it's the kind of delta between where you are now and where you're trying to get to that's going to be that thing to motivate you, that thing to inspire you to ultimately get to your goal. So the more you can make that goal interesting, exciting and fascinating and something that you really want to strive towards, the better. It really sounds really obvious, but if you think about a lot of the goals that we set our clients, they're not that way. They're not that interesting, they're not that exciting, and we don't necessarily focus a lot on the benefits. The second thing that I think is really important, track one thing, measure everything, constantly. Now this was something, again, that I did. You remember this graph? I tracked my weight 3-4 times a day, so literally every opportunity that I was near a set of scales, I weighed myself. And what I did is I weighed myself and I thought, well, okay, well, I'm slightly up on where I was, or I'm slightly down from where I was. And then I tracked everything around that. So my one single objective was weight. That was the only thing I was tracking. However, I was measuring everything. And that's calories in, calories out, what I'd eaten, how much I'd eaten, had I been drinking. You know, all these kind of things all went together to kind of assimilate what. So constantly tracking on this absolutely kind of religiously constant basis what was going on, and what were all the things around that. But it's really important that you track just one thing, and that kind of single-minded, being single-mindedness is so important. And sometimes we kind of give ourselves a get-out clause by throwing in second or third measures. And then sometimes we kind of halfway through, we kind of go, well, actually, maybe it's the second measure that was really important and not the first one. So, you know, for example, what I could quite happily have done is gone, I want to lose a load of weight, but I also want to be happy and I also want to be healthy. And then maybe after, you know, a few months of kind of just constantly slogging away, I'll kind of get to this point here and I go, or maybe it was the happiness thing that I was probably more focused on. Maybe actually it's not the weight thing and I'm really happy with myself, so therefore that's what I'm going to focus on now. It's going to be the happiness thing. So be single-minded, and that way you know you're not going to give yourself an excuse to focus on another one of these measures which is a bit more arbitrary. Devise a strategy and stick to it. Now this again, my strategy was have this 1,000 calorie deficit. So the idea was really simple. What I consume, what I expend, there's a 1,000 calorie deficit between the two. So ultimately that meant in that first few months I was basically on a kind of 1,500 calorie odd a day diet, and that was kind of my plan, because being a bloke, you get rid of 2,500 calories just in kind of living. So that was my strategy, and that's the way I did it. Now that worked kind of fairly well, but kind of hit this point and hit Christmas and kind of had this little jump here just after post-Christmas, and you kind of look at that, and that put me back kind of 6 weeks. Really demoralising, and you get to the point where you go, oh man, this is actually hard work. So when you have that strategy and you stick to it, and go, this is what I'm going to do, and all of a sudden I started plotting graphs, and I thought, you know, if I'm to get down here, it's going to take me years and years and years to begin to kind of get to that weight. I think it's Confucius said, if you don't reach your goal, don't change the goal, just change the next action step. And that's what I did at that point. I kind of went, okay, well, it's going to take a little while. So again, devise a strategy and stick to it until it's time to change. And that is really important and really, really hard to do, because often we say to our clients, well, this is your strategy and you should stick to it, and it gets to a point where you kind of go, well, actually, maybe you need to tweak that a little bit, and maybe you need to change that a little bit. And knowing where that line is and knowing when you need to have a new strategy or where you need to adamantly stick to your old strategy is a really delicate one, and really, one that's really, really hard to do. And what I did at this point here is I changed my strategy and I started running. January the 3rd, started on my Night Plus, started running, and again, vehemently tracking every single metre that I did, every calorie. My average time, if you sit next to me like Yelena does, you can see me every now and again checking my Google Maps to see the run that I've done and where it's fast and where it's slow. And again, constantly tracking. At this point, I changed my goal. And that point was, again, kind of continue to lose weight. Sorry, at this point, I changed my goal, and that was, I reached my goal, run the marathon. That's that next thing, and that's the most important thing. So finally, never, 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 never give up. And that's from Winston Churchill. So it's one of the things that we often forget is actually how much motivation is so important. Now, actually the last 2 or 3 things are really, really obvious. You know, it's ridiculous me standing up here and, you know, people sometimes say, oh, you used to be a big guy, no, you're not. What was it that you did? And I kind of go, oh, it was diet and exercise. And you go, it's not revolutionary, it's not rocket science, it's really, really obvious stuff. But the point and the difference is that for some reason, and I genuinely don't know what that was, and maybe it was some of the tools or some of the devices that I set up, maybe it was that goal, maybe it was the fact that I constantly measured, and therefore, you know, you look at the Heisenberg principle, you know what that is. Heisenberg principle, you can't track anything without affecting it. You know, maybe it was all those things, maybe it was all those things together, but the motivation and determination is the number one thing that's the difference between achieving your goal and not achieving your goal. And everything else around it, I kind of begin to think are really just tools or devices to give you more determination or to give you that more motivation to ultimately achieve your goal.